Okay, so what if psychology wasn't about fixing you, or improving you, or helping you make progress? What if instead its whole job was to restore a kind of lost language for the soul? Today, we're diving into the really radical work of the psychologist James Hillman and his rereading of alchemy. And for him, it's not about a quest for gold. It's about a deep, symbolic language that shows how our psyche actually thinks and feels and dreams. This sentence right here, this is the key to everything. It's a complete break from the goals of most modern therapy. See, Hillman wasn't interested in building a better, more efficient you. His entire project was about revisioning psychology itself to make room for the one thing he felt it had totally forgotten, the soul. So to really get to the heart of this, here's our path. We'll start with who Hillman was, and then we'll unpack his big move away from the ego. From there, we'll see how he reimagined alchemy as the soul's native tongue. We'll explore its three main modes of seeing, and then tie it all back to a deeper way of thinking. And finally, we'll see why any of this matters for a project called Dreaming Thought into Being. All right, first things first. To really get what he's up to, we need a clearer picture of the man himself. So, who exactly was James Hillman? Well, Hillman was a giant in what's called archetypal psychology. He actually trained at the prestigious Young Institute in Zurich. He was even the director for a while. So he was right at the heart of the very tradition he would end up critiquing so fiercely. He looked at modern psychology and saw an obsession, an obsession with progress, with cure, with moving forward. And for Hillman, that obsession had a huge cost. Psychology had lost touch with its own root word, psyche, the Greek word for soul. And that background leads us directly to the absolute core of his work, this fundamental, radical shift in what psychology should even be about. You can see the contrast so clearly here. On one side, you have the language we all know: growth, healing, progress. It's all about moving forward, getting better. Hillman just rejected that model. He turned instead toward depth, toward descent even, and toward what he called imaginal fidelity, which is the radical act of staying true to the images your psyche gives you instead of trying to analyze them or explain them away. This right here, this gets to the heart of what he means by soul-making. It's not about figuring out what your dream means. It's about letting the dream or the mood or the symptom speak for itself in its own bizarre language. It's about just attending to what's there without that immediate rush to fix it. And this is exactly where alchemy comes into the picture. For Hillman, alchemy wasn't some silly, outdated science experiment. It was the perfect metaphorical language for the soul's own movements. Now, it's so important to get this straight. When Hillman talks about alchemy, he's not talking about literally turning lead into gold. Not at all. He means something imaginal. It's poetic, not a step-by-step instruction manual. And most importantly, it's descriptive. It describes what the soul is already doing, rather than prescribing what it should do. Think of it like a mirror. Alchemy, in Hillman's view, just reflects the psyche back to itself. It gives us this rich set of images, darkening, whitening, reddening, that give a name to these processes we all go through, but so often treat as problems to be solved. So let's actually look at how this plays out through these three alchemical modes. But you have to remember, these aren't stages you complete in order. They're more like cyclical ways of seeing, modes you can enter and re-enter at any time. The first mode is the Nigredo. This is the descent, the blackening. It's a term that names that profound psychological experience where our usual ways of seeing the world just start to dissolve. The Nigredo is that darkening. It's a feeling of heaviness, of being completely lost, where your usual sense of competence and mastery just falls apart. Now, modern psychology might rush to call this depression and see it as something to get rid of, but Hillman saw it very, very differently. I mean, what a powerful reframing. The darkness isn't a failure. It is the very condition necessary for the soul to even show up. It's only when our bright, confident ego has to take a step back that the deeper images of the psyche can finally emerge from the shadows. From that darkness, we then can move into the second mode, the albedo. This is the whitening. It's a kind of cooling and clarification of the very images that came out of that dark period, a shift toward a much more reflective kind of seeing. The albedo is this whitening, this cooling down. It's a moment of clarity where the chaotic mess from the Nigredo starts to separate out and the images become a bit clearer. But, and this is a huge but, this isn't the ego swooping in to analyze and dominate. It's a much more gentle, reflective way of looking. The key insight here is that this clarity isn't about mastery.
You see the images, you might even recognize them, but you don't try to shrink them down to a simple explanation. You just let them be what they are in all their weird complexity. It's like lucid perception, but without the need for control.
And this brings us to the final mode, the rubedo. This is the reddening, the return of heat and blood. It's about an embodied return to the world, but now infused with the vision you've gained in those other modes.
So the rubedo is a reddening, a return of passion. But it's not a happy ending. It's not a final resolution. It's incarnation. It's about taking those insights, those images from the Nigredo and the albedo, and actually bringing them back into your lived life, into your job, your relationships, the way you speak. It's about participation, not perfection.
And this is absolutely crucial. So many spiritual or psychological paths aim for transcendence, right? Rising above the mess of ordinary life. Hillman says no. The goal here isn't to escape the world, but to return to it more fully, to actually embody the soul's images right here in our day-to-day existence. Okay, so we've got this wild alchemical cycle. How on earth does this connect to the actual act of thinking? Well, for Hillman, this cycle is a direct model for a deeper, more soulful kind of cognition. This cycle gives us a map for a totally different way of thinking. When we let our thinking enter Nigredo, we let go of our certainties, and that's what deepens our vision. Then the albedo comes along and refines our perception without oversimplifying it. And finally, in the rubedo, our thoughts become embodied, lived things, completely free from the need to come to some neat conclusion. It's a continuous loop.
And there you have it. That one sentence is a direct challenge to our modern obsession with productivity and linear logic. Soulful thinking isn't about getting faster or more efficient. It's about going deeper, making room for complexity, and learning to just stay with the image. Which brings us to our final question. Why does any of this matter for a project with a name like Dreaming Thought into Being? Hillman's Alchemy gives us the very tools we need for something like dreaming thought into being. It gives us a nonlinear model, getting us off the factory assembly line of ideas. It gives us a language for dissent, for exploring the shadows of a thought without labeling it as bad or wrong. Ultimately, it frames thinking not as a problem to solve, but as this imaginal, participatory, and always unfinished act that we're engaged in. That's the heart of it, right there. It's a huge shift from seeing thinking as something we do to something we are in a relationship with. It's all about participation, not mastery. We don't control the images, we learn how to listen to them. And so, this is where we end. Hillman doesn't give us a method or a technique or a 5-step plan. He just offers a way of seeing, a way of paying attention. Because maybe the soul doesn't need to be found or fixed. Maybe it just appears when our thinking is finally brave enough to slow down, to enter the dark, and to learn how to truly see again.